You're watching the Flourishing Introvert Show. If you're an introvert with more to offer and are looking for ways to play to your strengths authentically, you're in the right place. With up to 50% of any population identifying as an introvert, if you're not one, you'll know one, but you may not understand what makes them tick. Watching this show will help you to build that understanding and consequently build better business and personal relationships. Many people don't find out until their mid-years that what makes them different is their introversion. So this show is also for you if you're curious about becoming the best version of yourself. Let's get started. Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Show. I'm Joanna Rawbone. Come on in, make yourself comfortable and join me as I explore something that frankly lights me up, and I hope it lights you up too. It's the idea of putting a spring in your step. For those of you who've not joined me before, I'm the founder of Flourishing Introverts, and I'm on a mission to shift the extroversion bias so that people can own their introversion with confidence, pride, and a lived experience of equity. And we're a long way from that right now. I work with introverts who want to reach more of their potential, and I rattle the cages of organizations and educational establishments so that I'm highlighting and shaking out the extroversion bias that usually exists in plain sight. Now, putting a spring in your step and something that lifts me up, I just want to share this with you, which is something that I did this week, which was to make a spring wreath for my front door. I went to a workshop on Tuesday evening and I absolutely enjoyed every moment. And as we're going through more of what I'm sharing with you here, you might understand. So there's my spring wreath hung on my front door. We can stop looking at that now and just really get us back to what is it we're talking about here today. I figure many of my audience may well be watching this over the April break. So I wanted to create this particular show about the importance of being able to put a spring in our step, especially as it's aligning with the general spring, the season of spring, certainly here in the Northern Hemisphere anyway. What does it really mean, put a spring in your step? It's one of those phrases that we hear quite often, but what does it actually mean and why is it important right now? Well, the exact origins, I couldn't track them down, so I'm going to assume they're unknown, but the phrase put a spring in your step literally means to walk with energy, with confidence and with enthusiasm. And Mariah, who often joins this show, is all about movement, so she'll know all about putting a spring in our step and the importance of it. We also know how important those first impressions are, how much they count. So portraying that kind of energy is very important in life. I'm not talking about, pretending to be someone you're not, but actually walking with purpose and with energy actually gives off a certain energy that people often find almost magnetic, really compelling. Now, I recognize that this idea won't appeal to those of us who maybe use introversion as an excuse or play victim, but we know that behaviors like this are just part of the body's reciprocal processes. The processes that when we look happier, we feel happier. And when we walk with energy, we feel positively energetic. That's all part of the body's reciprocal processes. So I think it's time that we actually capitalized on those, that we took advantage of them in some ways. And it's relevant right now, I think, because here in the UK, we're experiencing the first flush of spring. There are new lambs in the field, daffodils that are bobbing their head in the breeze, and there's a bit of warmth already in the sun. In fact, a friend of mine who lives down by the coast actually sat out on the terrace and got his first bit of sunburn, would you believe? And that's partly because, of course, here by the coast, we get a lot of breeze as well. And that's why the daffodils are busy bobbing their heads and getting a little bit battered by it, because whilst there's some warmth in the sun, there's still an edge to the breeze. Last week, I shared a video on Facebook of a new lamb frolicking. And it honestly, as it's doing now, it had me smiling from ear to ear. And of course, being Facebook, it then showed me a succession of other young, energetic animals finding their feet for the first time and relishing in the fresh grass outside. And it's simple things like that that really can give us that little burst of energy, that little sense of inner happiness. And we almost can't help ourselves. For me, I suppose this is the best analogy, which serves to remind me that if I put a spring in my step, as the new lambs do, I'll experience similar joy and zest for life, and maybe I'll spark that in other people too. Regardless, I don't feel it can hurt to be more fleet of foot and in a somewhat playful way, I suppose. I'm not suggesting that we go all Monty Python's Ministry of Silly Walks, but for those of you who remember that, even that thought might have brought a smile to your face. If you've never seen that or too young to remember it, the Ministry of Silly Walks, then do a search for it online and see if it makes you chuckle. It's just ridiculous humor. But sometimes when you just need your spirits lifted, something like that can do it. Why now, though? Why particularly now, other than the fact that spring has sprung here in the UK? Well, certainly here, and I think in many places around the globe, we're having a little bit of a tough time of it because prices are soaring for everything. I've had my car insurance come in recently that has rocketed in price. My mobile phone contract has rocketed in price. Energy prices are rocketing too. So everything is going up. Inflation is rising. And of course, what we're earning potentially isn't covering what is now the cost of living in some cases. Add to that the conflict that's still raging around the planet and the level of unrest. You know, in France, just across the water from us here, there are big protests going on at the moment about the increase in the retirement age. What happened here in the UK when they raised the retirement age? Nothing. There was no protest. We just kind of went, oh, okay then. In many ways, I wish we could be more like the French and kind of, protest more, actually have our voices heard. I suppose because we're, most of us, looking to create a life that we love, that provides what we need for ourselves and our loved ones. Many of us, it means going out into this fractious world in which to earn a crust. And so it is. Out there we must be in some shape or form. So why not do it with a smile playing around our lips and a spring in our step? We choose how we feel. We choose our emotions. I can either choose to let the disasters that are going on around the world dampen my spirits, or I can wake up joyful that I woke up, as many of my friends haven't had that opportunity to do. They've gone too soon. So why not get out there with a smile playing on our lips, a spring in our step, because we might just lighten someone else's day too. Because I may have told you this before, happiness is contagious. And if you've forgotten, let me tell you again, happiness is contagious. So let's be spreading happiness around liberally. It'll be good for us, but it's also good for other people and good actually for the general environment. Now, potentially, I've already lost the doom and gloom merchants, those who prefer to catastrophize rather than look for silver linings. But I'm sure there are enough of us left to make a difference, to reach a tipping point. So how could you put a spring in your step? I'm going to share 7 ideas that come to mind really quickly for me. And maybe you can try some of them, pick and choose, maybe add to them as suits your needs or your temperament, because we are all unique. As I mentioned the other week, we are as varied as the colours in the Pantone palette. So what works for one isn't going to work for another, and that's absolutely fine. So I'm going to share just 7 of the things that really work for me. And if you've heard me talk about them before, I'm okay with that too, because sometimes we almost can't be reminded of them enough. So the first of the 7 is to practice gratitude. We know there are so many ways to do this. And I have a favourite of the moment. Yes, I journal. I have a gratitude journal that I use at the end of every day to capture things that I'm really grateful for that have happened throughout the day. But I also have an additional technique that I'm using at the moment. Sorry, I'm potentially about to sneeze, and that's because spring has sprung here in the UK and the trees are full of pollen. And so I have hay fever already. So if I do sneeze, I apologise for that. I'll try and contain it though. So my favourite of the moment is the gratitude jar. And it's just an empty glass jar. And every now and again, something that really has filled me with joy, I'll write a little note about it and pop us on a slip of paper and drop that slip of paper into my gratitude jar. And I watch as it fills up, sometimes because I often use little sticky notes, the little, almost like the bookmarker ones. It's a joy, it's a whole joyful mess of colour in there. And I derive great delight in popping my hand into my gratitude jar to have a lucky dip every now and again, to find something to pull out and read and remind me of something that I found utterly joyful, potentially beautiful, that really had me appreciate the power of things we often overlook when we're too busy or too preoccupied with life. I've already mentioned it, but just this week I dropped in how grateful I am for the brightness of those bobbing daffodils, and I've still got more that are starting to open in my garden. And the other thing I did was I popped in a little note about how grateful I was to have attended that wreath making course so that I could actually bring home, create, because I am a frustrated artisan, I could bring home the wreath that I'd made to hang on my front door for spring. And it's there brightening up my front door. And that in itself has made me feel great happiness. Talking of happiness, the second thing that I can do that gives me a spring in my step is to deliberately choose happiness. I've mentioned already that it's contagious. I'll probably mention it again. But from a positive psychology perspective, happiness involves several key factors, including positive emotions, engagement in things that bring us joy, in meaning in our life, positive relationships and achievement. And all of those things are wrapped up in our sense of happiness. And if we're not feeling happy, just explore those areas of your life. What is it you're doing that brings meaning to your life? What positive relationships do you have in your life? They don't have to be intimate relationships. They don't even have to be geographically close. They can be across the world relationships. And what achievements are you experiencing? Sometimes they take a while to manifest, but they are a key part of actually manifesting happiness. I'm a big fan of Dr. David Hamilton, who's a renowned author and speaker on the topic of happiness. And it's he that I've listened to some of his audiobooks, read some of his books, and it's him that emphasizes that happiness is a choice. He's a scientist and a neuroscientist now. And it's not something, happiness is not necessarily something that just happens to us. It does sometimes if we're in the energy field of someone else who is radiating happiness. But actually, for most of us, we choose it every day and every moment of every day, because we have free choice. We can choose doom and gloom, or we can choose happiness. And it's those simple things in life that often bring us that happiness. It doesn't have to be all the riches of the world, or the flashiest cars, or the most expensive bags or shoes, or a house stacked full of stuff. In fact, it can be the simplicity of empty houses, and be the simplicity of feet in the earth. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment too. And Hamilton points out that happiness is contagious. When we're happy, we're more likely to spread that happiness to others because our energy fields meet. We can't help but not do that. And by being a positive influence in the lives of others, we not only improve their lives, but also our own. And I think that is an absolutely fabulous thought. Number 3 on my list of things that actually put a spring in my step is to compliment strangers. And people may say, an introvert, you're just going to go up to strangers? The answer is yes, I do. My favorite is to go up to another woman and tell her how much I like her style, or her haircut, her glasses, her smile, her shoes. And that brings to mind that fabulous piece by Donna Ashworth. And I'm a big fan, as you know, of Donna Ashworth. And her piece goes like this. I said your hair looked amazing, but what I really wanted to say was, your energy sparks a little bit of something in mine. Your smile warms my heart. And when you laugh, I just have to laugh too. It's like a bubbling stream of fresh water running through my soul. I feel like the sun is shining on me when you're near. And when I leave you, sad as it is, I feel like I've been charged, plugged into the mains for an infusion of fizz and life. But I said, I love your shoes instead. I hope you heard what I really meant. It doesn't matter how many times I read or recite that piece. It really resonates with me. And these days, I am getting much better. I am getting much better at saying, actually, I love your energy. I spark off your energy. I'm recharged in your presence. Although sometimes I will still say, I love your shoes. And I don't think it matters. What matters is that we're actually acknowledging the presence of another human being. And we're telling them that we appreciate something about them. Just today, when I was in my office, I was in the little cafe breakout area, and there was this beautiful, tall Amazonian young woman. And I think she was probably about 6'2", and I'm only 5'1". So massive difference between us. And I said to her, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I am slightly envious, and I absolutely love your height. I hope you can appreciate it, because I know many tall people actually feel awkward. And she turned to me and she smiled, a gorgeous smile, and said, thank you. Most of the time, I do appreciate it. And what so struck me was that her first words were, thank you. She accepted the gift I gave her. She didn't say, oh, well, actually, I'd rather be a bit shorter. No, she accepted the gift. And that's what happens when we can find it in our hearts to compliment other people. Of course, it has to be authentic, but there's so many things we can find to compliment other people on. Number 4 on my list is to get into nature. And that's exactly what I did when I created that beautiful spring wreath. Because whilst for me it might mean getting my hands or feet in the soil or in the sand or in the sea, what I was able to do on Tuesday evening was to get my hands in the sphagnum moss and create the ring for my wreath that I was going to then pack with some spring blooms and some eucalyptus cuttings and other foliage that just is gorgeous. I'll probably share that picture again just at the end of the show so that you can have a look at it again, because it inspired me, it's inspired other people. And it's one of the things that I think, well, I made a Christmas wreath. Why couldn't I have a wreath all through the year? Because if it gets me out into nature, if it gets me handling plants and really kind of tenderly working with them, I think that's a beautiful feeling. For me, connecting with nature is very grounding and life affirming. I've been pottering in the garden quite a lot as it's been warming up here. And I've been planting out my little veg seedlings. I've been planting my dahlia corms and also my sweet peas. Some of them overwintered, but I've planted a few more. And my Swiss chard is growing nice and strong. So much is springing to life that enables me to have that spring in my step. And of course, the benefits of even small scale growing, whether we've just got a terrace or a window box, shows it can improve our mood, reduce the symptoms of stress and anxiety and depression. So it's well worth doing whatever small thing you can. And if you have a communal garden, get out and potter in the communal garden too. There is something very invigorating about getting your hands in the soil. An added benefit is that it can promote mental clarity as we focus on creating the right environment and handling our tender plants with care. When I was making the wreath, I couldn't think of anything else. I wasn't trying either, but I was totally absorbed by it. And that's one of the benefits that it brings. Number 5 is to take a social media or smart device break, or even have a digital detox. You know, spring break is a great time to do this, to deliberately switch off from the tech. I have just created my out of office message, and I hope it will cause other people to smile and maybe even follow my lead, because mine says, I'm either out in the garden or at the seaside. So if you leave a message, don't expect an immediate reply. And of course, it was only a few weeks ago that I was talking about the perils of our immediacy habit. Number 6, put on some stirring music and dance. Dance like no one is watching and like you don't care. As William W. Perky said, you've got to dance like there's nobody watching, love like you'll never be hurt, sing like there's nobody listening, and live like it's heaven on earth. I think we're altogether too self-conscious. And honestly, what's the worst that could happen? I loved seeing my friend Jennifer Page last week post a video of her doing an acrobatic handstand during a marathon walk for charity. There's a girl who had a spring in her step, and I applauded her for it. Number 7 on my list is to put on your Sunday best for no reason. Don't save it for special. Every day is special. I now wear my lovely jewelry even when I'm just going to work. I'll put makeup on or not to please me, not to please anybody else. I'll use the best china for takeaways, or use your crystal glasses for your beer. Anything that makes you smile. Buy yourself some flowers or pick some from your garden. You don't need a special occasion to have flowers in your house. I picked a few daffodils that were in my garden that had been knocked about. They only lasted a few days, but because they'd been knocked about so much, at least I could appreciate them in the house. So even when they're a bit battered, they were still beautiful. And I always think daffodils have such happy faces. So whatever you need to do to put a spring in your step over the next couple of weeks, do it. Watch out though, because it's addictive and contagious. So when I hear about a surge of springiness, we'll know what the possible origin is. And as Christy Brinkley said, adopting a really positive attitude can work wonders for adding years to your life, a spring to your step, and a sparkle to your eye, and all of that. So here's to all of that and more. I thought I'd just share that lovely spring wreath that I made with you again, because for me, it just epitomizes this season. It probably won't last very long, but you know what's magic about it? Those little blooms are in little vials, and I can replace them. I can top the water up and I can replace them with other blooms. So there's no reason why it can't go on for a few weeks yet. And if you would like to know a little bit more about working with me to put a spring in your step, then find me on my website, which is flourishingintroverts.com, where you'll find information, courses and freebies. Send me an email to joanna@flourishingintroverts.com to connect with me, to let me know what you'd like me to talk about on these shows. I've got a little list of things I'm building up, so I'll get through to most of them in due course. And of course, remember that very soon we'll be looking at launching the Unfulfilled to Flourishing program. So keep your lookout for that, but also keep your lookout for things from my new Etsy shop. I'll be sporting a sweatshirt fairly soon from that, and it's going to be absolutely joyous. So thank you for joining me for this show. I've appreciated your company. Remember to connect with me. Remember to let me know. But most of all, remember to put a spring in your step and let your happiness be contagious. Thank you.